Good afternoon folks, welcome to Visordown, and more importantly actually, welcome to our review of the Tuono 660 from Aprilia. This is a bike that I've literally been looking forward to riding since I rode the RS 660. In fact, I've been looking forward to riding this bike since before it was even announced, because as soon as Aprilia announced the RS 660, all eyes were on the naked version that was going to take on the likes of the MT-07, the KTM 890 Duke, and all the other bikes in that awesome middleweight naked sector that just seems to catch the imagination of so many riders in the UK and the rest of the world. And yeah, I've had it for a week, haven't done as much riding on it as I'd want. I've had a bit of a shoulder injury, but today the weather's been, changeable, I think is the word. As you can see, the bike's a little bit mucky, so it has pissed it down on us. But we made the most of it, and we have been here and we've been razzing around, and we thought we'd just stop and tell you about the Tuono. The bike is a shade under £10,000, which makes it about 500 quid less than the RS 660. Now, if we're bundling it into the competitive area of that 75 brake horsepower up to 100 brake horsepower region, you've got it going toe to toe with the likes of the MT-07, which does make the Aprilia seem rather expensive, as coming in about sort of £3 more than the MT-07. I don't think of it as more of a competitor for the MT-07. So I think of the Tuono 660 more as a natural rival to bikes like the KTM 890 Duke, just in terms of the price, in terms of the performance, in terms of the level of tech and the equipment that the bike has got on it. So this is slightly detuned from the RS 660. So this has got 94 bhp, whereas the RS 660, the sports bike that Aprilia have got, has got about 99 bhp or 98 bhp. So let's have a little chat about the engine of this thing, because it has been slightly revised from the RS 60 that I rode at the tail end of last year. It is of course the twin cylinder parallel twin that is half of the RSV 41100 engine, so the front bank cylinders have just been lopped off, and this bike has got all of the character that the RS 660 has. The torque delivery has been slightly manipulated to make it a bit better on the road. The peak power has been reduced slightly. It doesn't rev quite as high, but it still revs as quick. It still builds speed and builds momentum really quickly. It's a dead fizzy and a really lively motor. I was a big fan of the RS 660, and I think I actually prefer the Tuono, which is weird because it's got less power. But you know, on the roads that we've been riding today and the type of sort of weather that we've encountered, we've had a couple of sort of like wintry hailstorms and showers and stuff. You're not looking at the power figure, you're not looking at maximum power, you're looking at the torque that it's got, you're looking at where it delivers its torque, and you're looking at how it puts the torque to the road. The throttle connection is a little bit snatchy. I think I said that about the RS 660, but it's kind of got this weird feel to the ride-by-wire throttle of the bike. I don't know if you ever used to race those Sega TT arcade motorcycle machines where the throttle was just, there was no spring in it at all. I first got on it after riding a Honda CB1000R over to Aprilia to collect this, and the CB1000R's throttle is absolutely pitch perfect, and this felt like a bit of something had gone inside it, but it is just the way that it is. Once you're out on the road and you're riding it, it doesn't really hamper your progress, and you do get used to it, and you can get your head around the kind of the electronic sort of almost binary feeling that the throttle gives off. So yeah, the engine is really good. I've not really done any MPG tests or anything like that, because it's not really the bike that you're going to be sort of like hunting really high MPGs on or anything like that. But the engine is vibe free, comfortable, easy to ride, and most of all, I do think that this bike is accessible. I do get the feeling that you could take someone who just passed their direct access and sort of plonk them on this, and it would feel like an absolute rocket ship to them, but they wouldn't be out of their depth. I think they'd still be able to deal with the amount of power that it's got, and because it's quite dependable, it's quite user friendly, and of course you've got the electronic rider modes there that you can actually just turn it down and let yourself progress up those. Need to talk about the handling of this thing, because that was one of the things that really impressed us on the RS 660. I keep going back to it, and it's because it's basically the same bike just without a fairing, so bear with me on that one. We have got the same K-Arbor suspension, but it's been tuned differently. We have got the same Brembo brakes. They are not top spec Brembo, they are very much mid spec Brembos. The Tuono 660 doesn't come as standard with an IMU, which the RS 660 does. So you've got the 2-channel braking system, and it's got its own offset for the front end, and the top yokes are slightly different to sort of just bring the handlebars where they need to be to sort of reach the rider, for want of a better phrase. Okay, first and foremost, The settings in the suspension, they are slightly softer than the RS660. You feel the bike pitch more on the brakes, weights and loads to the front end, but there's still all the support there that you need for like decent road riding. I haven't had any problems whatsoever on that front. Somehow the brakes on this feel stronger than they did on the RS660. I think it's down to the fact that you've got those big wide handlebars and you can just really manipulate the bike and manhandle the bike on the brakes, but the brakes feel super powerful on this, and they felt good on the RS660, but they feel absolutely great on this thing. Obviously you can mess around with all the ABS on this. They seem to be the only company that let you turn things like the ABS off to the rear wheel, so you can do skids and all sorts of stuff, which is really good as well. I've been having a lot of fun with that. And in terms of the handling, it's just so nicely balanced. A bit like the braking system seems to be improved by the introduction of the handlebars. I actually think that the handling of the bike has been improved as well, because you've got such wide handlebars on the thing and you can just chuck it into a corner, and when you need to make a small adjustment or you just need to sort of adjust where the bike's going, you just do it. It's so easy, it's so intuitive. And it's so easy and, you know, fun to ride. It really is. I've had an absolute hoot on it today. Like I said, you can turn all the ABS and stuff off. You've got all the wheelie control that you need, so you can do stoppies and you can do wheelies, and even sort of I think I almost backed it in earlier on, which was quite amazing for me. I think I shocked myself a little bit, but it's just great fun. It just eggs you on, but it's never silly. You don't feel like you're going silly speeds. I mean, you could be whizzing down the road with the biggest grin that you've ever had on your face, look down at the speedo and you're only doing like 80 or 90 miles an hour. It's great, and it's really good for sort of learning and sort of bringing on a new rider, I think, but definitely not boring for somebody that's more experienced. The first thing that I noticed about this was that it feels quite compact. The bars sort of come back to sweep to meet you, and the seat is quite small. I mean, I'm quite small, and I find that there isn't much room to sort of move around on the seat. The seat to peg distance is great, and actually the upper body ergonomics are quite good. It just feels very compact to me. I mean, if you're someone that was really tall, and I mean really tall, like over 5'10", you are probably going to feel it a little bit cramped, and you are probably then going to be starting to look at the RSV4 as maybe the bike that you should be going for. But definitely get down to a dealership and try it out and see how you go. Equipment wise, we've got a similar level of spec on the equipment front to the RS660. Like I mentioned earlier, it doesn't have the IMU as standard, but it does have that nice TFT dash, which is really clear to read, and the riding modes, changing those is all quite easy to do on the left and the right hand switch cube. So we've got 5 riding modes, and like I said, you can go into each of those riding modes. You can just the wheelie control, the traction control, the engine braking control, the ABS level, and it's just super bike levels of electronics on it. I mean, it's just basically just taken off things like the Tuono 1100 and the RSV4 and dumped it into a bike that's much smaller and much lighter, and it just means that you can absolutely manipulate this thing in every which way. It's quite impressive. It's also a little bit daunting if you don't know what you're doing, to go through all the menus and changing stuff, but really you can just feel a gradual difference as you go through and you change them. It's a very intuitive system, and the electronics on Aprilia are generally good. The only one that I haven't been getting on along with today is the wheelie control, which kind of, as soon as you get the front wheel up, it just slams it back down into the road again. The MT-09 that I've also got as a long-termer, it's called lift control. It doesn't control the wheelie, it helps the lift. So once the front wheel's up, it sort of just holds it at a nice angle for you. This is totally different. With any amount of wheelie control in it, for me, it's just slamming the front wheel back down into the road, which is quite unceremonial. I really like the bike's sort of get up and go attitude. I like the fact that it's an accessible motorcycle that's really designed at people who aren't, you know, completely totally experienced riders who haven't been riding for years and years and years, but actually you can get on it, and if you're an experienced rider, you can get on it, and it's such a good bike to ride. It just isn't boring in any way at all. It's a lot of fun. I like the styling for this year. I think that Aprilia have done a good job, and now I quite like the fact that the Tuono and the RS125 is now a completely joined up range, and all those bikes you can just instantly recognise them as one big family. I still think that the engine of this thing is the crowning glory of it. I think it's an absolute corker of a unit, and it just goes to show that if you've got around about 100 horsepower in a chassis that's under, and a total bike weight that's under 200 kilograms, you've got an absolute recipe for motorcycle road riding joy. It's really impressive. So, I mean, really, what would you go for then? I mean, you're asking me this. What would you go for, Toad? You've got the Tuono 660, you've got the Triumph Trident 660, you've got the KTM Duke 890R, you've got, or the KTM Duke 890, and you've got the MT-07. It's a really tough question. If I was going to be riding a bike every day and I was going to be commuting on it, and it was going to be my only bike that had to do everything on, I probably wouldn't go for the Aprilia, just simply for the fact that I don't think it would weather the winters too well, and I think it would start to look a little bit tired. If that was the case, I'd probably go for something really good value like the MT-07. If, for instance, I had already had a bike in the garage and that I was commuting on, I was doing all that sort of stuff, and I wanted something that was a little bit special that I could take out on the weekends, maybe do the odd track day on, I'd really have a tough decision deciding between this and the KTM 890 Duke. I think the Trident is kind of over towards the MT-07 in terms of the level of spec equipment and the price, and the 890 Duke and the R660 Tuono are kind of like, I would really struggle to pick one. I'd go for the Tuono on that one. Anyway, I've been Toad. Thanks very much for watching, folks. Bye bye.